It is officially 2024 NFL trade deadline day, and we discuss if the Ravens will make another move, what that move should be, plus Bill Belichick going off on the Ravens and Lamar Jackson, all that and more coming up next year on this episode of Locked On Ravens.
You are Locked On Ravens, your daily Baltimore Ravens podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into another edition of Locked On Ravens, your daily Baltimore Ravens podcast. I'm your host, Kevin Ostreicher of Ravens Wire, here with you on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thank you so much for being here on this trade deadline Tuesday, not Taco Tuesday, trade deadline Tuesday, and making Locked On Ravens both a part of your day and your first listen each and every single day, free and available for you, all podcasting platforms. That includes in video form on YouTube, where you can like and subscribe to the channel. Also in audio form, you can follow along and subscribe over there as well. It's 5 days a week of Ravens content, plus more here on Locked On Ravens. Same show, both audio and video, so you're not missing out on anything, regardless of how you like to watch or listen. Today's episode of Locked On Ravens is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Here with me, former Baltimore Ravens wide receiver, Super Bowl champion Qadry Ismail, here just in time for the trade deadline queue. We don't know what's going to happen. Of course, we know Diontae Johnson, already a member of the Baltimore Ravens, but we're going to be diving into a lot today. The Ravens coming off a huge win against the Broncos. They definitely needed that one, but now's another opportunity for the Ravens to add to their team and make this roster a little bit better.
Interestingly enough, I think the Eric DeCosta trade for Diontae Johnson was a brilliant one in so many ways because of the fact that they recognize what's before them. They have a team that is playing lights out, but they have a defense that's not quite up to snuff. And I think the ability to have multiple weapons, get into a shootout, feel confident in putting the ball in Derrick Henry / Lamar Jackson and all the other guys' hands, that's going to favor them. And so from a trading aspect, it's a cool move for them. Yet, like you just said, it's Tuesday. So Tuesday means that could be a possibility to get somebody on the defensive side of the football, which I think is really where, if the Ravens do get a coveted guy, a rush in perhaps, or somebody to help them in the interior, that's going to go a long way as far as solidifying what I think is already the best team in football.
Yeah, and it would definitely go a long way, especially after what we have seen with some of these pass rushers in the secondary. I know that there are some question marks there, so we're going to get into plenty of trade talk. I know you love it, so we'll be getting into it in the second part of the show here. But I first want to start off with what Bill Belichick had to say about this Ravens team and kind of work that into what we saw for Lamar Jackson and the team against Denver on Sunday. And we've definitely heard this narrative before, Q. You and I have talked about it, the both of us. But Bill Belichick went on the Pat McAfee show, and he said, quote, "I don't think they've lost a game this year. The games they've lost them more than somebody else has won. The biggest opponent for the Ravens is the Ravens. If they can do the things they do well, do them consistently, they'll be great." And so we know, Q, that the Ravens can sometimes have some self-inflicted mistakes and some things that, look, if they just let one penalty doesn't happen or one dropped interception doesn't happen or something along those lines, yeah, maybe we're talking about a different record team right now. But I know the big saying is your record is what you are. And so this is a 6-3 Baltimore Ravens team. It seems like, look, on the offensive side of the ball, who could stop this team? I mean, they just put up 40+ on the best defense in football. Obviously, defensively, as we talked about, there is some room for improvement. But do you agree with Bill Belichick that the Ravens' biggest opponent is themselves, and that really the Ravens have lost these games themselves more than opponents have actually won and beaten the Ravens?
If you look at the 3 games that they lost, then you can understand where Bill Belichick is coming from. You had pretty much a Kansas City game where Chris Jones was just wreaking havoc on the offensive line, and they were a toe away from tying up, winning the game. You then look at what they did against the Las Vegas Raiders, and goodness gracious, like Max Crosby is still getting sacks on the Ravens because everybody else is getting sacked. off of that coaching staff because they're so sorry and they're just not doing what they need to do. So that's that. And you go ahead and don't get Gardner Minshew on your defense, you'd be living large. When you look at what they did against the Cleveland Browns, my God, man. I mean, all the mistakes that they made, if Kyle Hamilton catches a gifted interception, you're kneeling the ball down and you still only have 2 losses. There's nothing that says in any of those 3 losses the other team just thoroughly dominated them and they shouldn't have, been in those games. They literally were in every single game. So, yes, should the football gods have them at 9-0? Okay, you could make that statement, but the fact remains is that they played down to their level in 2 of those 3 games, and they just didn't play well enough from a standpoint of the Kansas City game with their offensive line play. So Bill Belichick is right. If you get your mind right, you do what you're supposed to do, you're going to just run roughshod over the Dallas Cowboys. If you do what you need to do and really bear down on a primetime stage against a hot Buffalo Bills team, you're going to take the very first offensive play 87 to the hizzy, and you're going to have a guy like Kyle Van Noy just whoop up on Josh Allen. When you play the way you're supposed to play, you can take a defense like the Denver Broncos, who had the number 1 defense, and just make them look like amateur hour and put up 41 on them. It's about what your mindset is, and I think for this ball club, it's focusing in on you. Guys got to stay healthy. Pretty much you're going to have a scenario where the other team bobbles a potential field goal, and now you're looking at like, oh my goodness, this team is for real. You got to have things go your way. You have to clean up those mistakes special teams wise. But I think ultimately this offense is humming along, and it's up to the defense and special teams to kind of pick up the slack and continue along the way for the rest of the year.
Yeah, and I think as well, I mean, this is a good roster. It's obviously a historic offense, and I think on the defensive side of the ball, the talent is there. But we've seen it far too often, Q, where it will be a hindrance to the team in multiple different aspects of, oh, well, they can't play mistake-free football, or they play with too many penalties, and that can cost them games. So I agree with you. Where when is the last time that the Ravens have lost the game because an opponent has beaten them? I mean, I go back to last year against Cleveland. I'd say that was probably the game where Deshaun Watson had that half, and when was it, like 13 for 13, and Baltimore got out physical. Like that was a game that Cleveland took from Baltimore, right?
Yeah.
That was a game that you can say, okay, Cleveland went into Baltimore and they beat the Ravens. But other than that, there have been game plan issues, execution issues, play calling, whatever you want to call it. And it seems like more often than not, I mean, I agree with Bill Belichick here. It seems like Baltimore just beats themselves far too often. But they did not beat themselves against Denver on Sunday, Q. Just an absolute demolition of that Denver Broncos team. And Bill Belichick was talking about Lamar's leadership being at an all-time high. He had him on his like mid-season all MVP list. I know there's been controversy between Lamar, Jared Goff, Josh Allen, like all these different, even Joe Burrow, even though for him, I don't think the record is nearly as good as it needs to be to actually win that award right now. But for you, Q, what have you seen out of Lamar, particularly on Sunday? And it's just, to me at least, so impressive that seemingly we think that he can't top what he's already been doing. And then he goes out there and just has another masterpiece performance.
What was so impressive is how he won it. I saw the stat where Lamar set a team record of consecutive games of 275 yards passing.
Yeah.
And it was like 5 in a row, which just goes to show you the evolution of Lamar Jackson and even, Todd Monken, as far as both of them just continually being on that same page. But Lamar chose to chill and not run. And the fact that he only had 1 day of practice and to handle the number one defense the way he did, the game slowed down for him so much that, not that you want to set a precedent by having just 1 day of practice, but it does help to feel like, hey, you know what? I don't need to really overly work myself. I need to mentally be ready, and that's enough. And I think that enough element is something for Lamar Jackson to really look at and grow on. Like, say, okay, cool. This is what I did. This is what I need to continue to do. These are some of the things I need to tweak. And part of those things that he needs to tweak, I love how the fact that he was like, hey, T. Martin really did an excellent job of helping me with fine-tuning the game plan. All of those things have to, be in consideration as to Lamar Jackson's brilliance.
Yeah, and brilliance is the word that I would use too. Like, we were sitting here a couple of times, Q. We were like, all right, 2019. When are we going to see an offense as historic as this 2019 offense? Is it ever going to happen? Is it going to happen in our lifetimes? When's it going to? And here we are 5 years later talking about an offense that is on pace to shatter almost every single one of those records. And then from last year, we were sitting there watching Lamar Jackson do his thing. We were like, oh, is this the best we're ever going to see Lamar Jackson? Like, when is Lamar going to top a season like this? And here we are less than a year later, literally a year later, talking about Lamar in such a light of the improvements, both for his on-field play, the way the game, I mean, I don't know about UQ, but to me, it just seems like the game feels so slow for Lamar Jackson right now. Like, it is all slowed down for him. He doesn't panic. He doesn't get flustered. He just lets the game come to him. And obviously, for any evolution of any young quarterback, the game will seem fast at first. I mean, that's just what it is. But as you evolve over the course of your career, we now see with Lamar in particular here, he's such a low mistake player. And I think part of it is Todd Monken and John Harbaugh opened up this offense to Lamar, something we didn't really see under Greg Roman. But John Harbaugh, Todd Monken made it very clear that, hey, Lamar, we're going to give you the keys. And I think Lamar has taken those keys. And look, I mean, he is driving away. He's driving wherever he wants, because to me, it just seems like not a night and day difference, because Lamar was always really good. But it just seems like the ceiling, we're now seeing him continue to raise that. Now it's almost like on a game-by-game basis.
Interesting, the two plays that speaks to what you're saying in the Broncos victory. It's when it was after Bateman drops the one ball off of a scramble.
Yep.
The scramble itself was phenomenal.
Yes.
It was just so poised, and he, was like, all right, Bate, I'm about to get it to you. Besides that one, he came back. It was 3rd and 10. And you're like, oh, man, this is not good. Well, Denver does what Denver does. They had everybody covered. The rush was coming upon him, but he didn't necessarily panic. Well, he didn't panic, period. Don't say necessarily. Lamar didn't panic. Lamar was poised, kept his eyes down the football field. But when he took off to run, you could see where his whatever's ailing him ain't really fully healed, but he just casually gets the first down. And like his poise within the pocket to do it was like, whoa, that was new. Then what further slowed down was when he was in the red zone and he could have taken off and run it, and there was a lane to run, but instead he kept his eyes downfield and flicked it to Zay Flowers running across the back of the end zone. Those two plays is where it shows the slowing down element of his game. You just, playing. What are the two cliches we've been saying that he has said himself? Pick your poison offense, number one. And then number two, when it comes down to it, like, hey, I can do what I need to do to win a ball game. I'm going to do whatever it needs to do to win a ball game. So I think for, Lamar, he really is just showing it. He's evolved his game, and that's really evident the way he's playing as of late.
Yep, evolution after evolution after evolution for Lamar Jackson. It has been incredible to watch. We're coming up with the second part of the show, trade deadline. It is coming up at the time we're recording this, and it comes out less than 12 hours away. We're going to talk about what our thoughts are on the deadline. We'll talk a little bit about Diontae Johnson as well. Get into some predictions, all that and more coming up next on Locked On Ravens. First, this show is brought to you by Game Time. The hype in the atmosphere of watching basketball live is incredibly. Aside from the court and the field, the crowd. And for me, I'm a Denver Nuggets guy, so when the Nuggets are in DC, I try to go to those games, and I'm looking forward to doing that in the future. And Game Time is a new feature called Game Time Picks. It makes getting tickets to see your favorite teams play live even easier. And plus, Game Time has tickets for all events, concerts, shows, and more, not just sports. Game Time Picks photos out the fluffs and show you all the incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. And so for this Ravens and Bengals game, Thursday night football, be sure to head over to Game Time and Game Time Picks and look for deals. You got super deals and other tiers of deals as well. And the app has so many awesome features such as Game Time Picks, seat views, lowest price guarantee, Game Time ticket coverage, and so much more. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time Picks. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Turn this button and create an account, redeem code LOCKEDONNFL, spell LOCKED1NFL for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? Game Time. And the show is brought to you by FanDuel. Get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because right now new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So to get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, your live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. We're going to start with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more. FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. We are back. Our second segment, Locked On Ravens. Kevin Oestreicher and Qadry Ismail still here with you on this trade deadline Tuesday, Taco Tuesday. You know, after the trade deadline, maybe going for some tacos, you can kind of morph both into one if you like. So exciting Tuesday on the docket here in Q. We have to get into, you and I haven't talked on this show about Diontae Johnson yet in the acquisition. Obviously didn't play a ton in the game against Denver on Sunday, still getting acclimated. Nelson Agholor obviously taking him under his veteran wing, even though Diontae's a veteran too. But really good display of leadership by Nelson Agholor, letting him stay at his house as he gets acclimated to Baltimore. But you and I talked last week about how wide receiver, while not the biggest need for the Ravens on their list of needs, certainly was one that they could look into acquiring, because the depth behind both Zay Flowers and Rashad Bateman, it wasn't as good as maybe the Ravens needed it to be. So now you bring in Diontae Johnson, who's an established player. And if someone goes down, knock on wood, that does not happen. But if there's some sort of a need, you feel a lot better about Diontae coming in with his separation skills and his veteran experience than you do with some of the other guys on this roster. So how did you like the Diontae Johnson deal, especially Q, because the Ravens only gave up a 5th-round pick, and in addition, they got a 6th-round pick back with Diontae. So essentially, it was almost like a free move, considering Carolina's also paying most of that salary.
When we looked at training camp and they brought in Andre Miller, I thought he was going to be the guy that was the valuable piece that they were going to need. And Miller, for whatever the reason, just clearly didn't pan out. He's on the practice squad, sure. But as far as like active roster, to go out and make a trade just kind of shows you, all right, you really haven't given us the confidence that we need to say that we got the depth that we want. So, Diontae, I think his abilities, his experience, his quickness in the hole is so evident. I think when you look at some of the big plays that he's made in the red zone, as well as in the open field, whether he was a Steeler or a Carolina Panther, it's all there. So I think the depth piece is great injury-wise, but also one of the things that we've seen from teams they've recognized that the more pieces that you have, those big time Super Bowl contending teams over the years, plural, that that there are guys that are going to go down or guys that are going to get banged up or whatever. You want to just have another guy step right in and just do it. And I think that's where the advantage comes in for Lamar Jackson when he's looking out at his receiving core. He doesn't feel like there's a drop in talent.
And we know that Deontay is not a defensive player. Obviously, he's not going to rush the passer. He's not going to go cover wide receivers. But I think that there is value in his acquisition if you look at it just from its own perspective, not looping it in. And we'll talk about expectations for the trade deadline coming up in a couple of minutes, Q. But I want to look at this move as just Deontay Johnson trade, not, okay, is he a defender or not? Like, we know the Ravens should probably add a defender by the time the trade deadline is over. Yeah. But this essentially is just like, oh, the Panthers are offering you a quality wide receiver for barely any move back in the draft, and they're paying most of the salary. Why wouldn't you take that, especially when you know that your depth could stand to improve? So I thought it was a great trade for the Ravens when looking at it from that perspective. But defensively, Q, we know the Ravens, again, probably should make some level of an addition. We saw even against Denver on Sunday, hey, you know what? Your guy came through. Tavius Robinson, 2 sacks on a day, looking really, really good out there. But other than that, it really seems like the Ravens couldn't get a ton of pass rushing juice. Not having Travis Jones right now really hurts them on the interior. He's been their best interior pass rusher. With Nnamdi Madubuike, if he's not wrecking the game, you have to win one-on-ones. And if that's Odafe Owe, if that's Calvin Noy, if that's somebody else, you have to take advantage of a guy like Nnamdi Madubuike being taken out of the game plan by an opposing offense. But right now, it doesn't really seem like that's happening. So you look at guys like a Zadarius Smith, who, by the way, probably not happening because I don't think Cleveland's trained in division. But is it Jadeveon Clowney, Arden Key? You're looking on the interior with a guy like Calais Campbell. In my opinion, this Ravens pass rush needs help because it can't just be the Nnamdi Madubuike, Travis Jones show and nobody else steps up. Calvin Noy had a great start to the season, but he kind of hasn't been the guy that we've seen over the past month. David Ojabo is now a healthy scratch. That looks like a really bad situation right now. Do you feel like Baltimore needs a pass rusher at this deadline?
Yeah, something on the interior, something where you can get to the quarterback, because technically I saw there are times where Nnamdi wasn't doubled. He didn't get to the quarterback. And so I don't know if that's fatigue. I don't know if that's technique. I don't know what is going on, but anytime Aaron Donald was single covered, he's getting to the quarterback. So if baby Aaron is going to step up to be grown man Aaron and replace the Hall of Famer, then we want to see, all right, more production. I think at the same time, when you look at Travis Jones, that injury looks like his ankle is still kind of a little foul and funky. That's going to kind of hamper the big fella. You talked about, the other guys as far as Odafe and Kyle and all that. Heck, even who was the other guy that they had brought in?
Ngakoue,
saw him a few times, and all of them, they seem like they're so close, yet they can't just finish it. And I know, in particular for Denver, Bo Nix was he's a mobile quarterback, and he obviously made some really good scrambles, extended the play a few times, but make no question about it. And if you want to be that, like, man, this is what it is to get into the playoffs, like pressuring the opposing team's quarterback is everything. And I just think that, there were times where they brought some pressure from the outside, which we've seen be very successful, whether it be Kyle or Arthur or whomever in that regards. But I could totally see some of the names that you called, whether it be Calais from an interior aspect of things, whether it be, I think Cleveland, not that Zadarius couldn't be traded, because Cleveland technically, all right, you don't want to trade him in division, but if you're trying to build for the future, because pretty much your season is a wash, then you probably be like, no big deal. Um, there are some opportunities there to trade some different guys. I would love to see Jadeveon Clowney be back. I think that dude, he clicked well with Baltimore, and it was awesome. And I think that would be great to have him back.
Hey, let's bring everybody home. Let's bring
Yeah,
Zadarius, Calais, Jadeveon, everybody come on back to Baltimore. Let's
new
meet
team photo.
meet at the quarterback. And hey, that's what Calais and Yannick used to say to each other when they were in Jacksonville together. And obviously they played together in Baltimore for a little bit as well when Yannick got traded to the Ravens. But they need definite pass rushing juice. They do. And I know a lot of people here were talking about the secondary, and obviously that's a big contention point as well because, Brandon Stevens struggled against Cortland Sutton on Sunday. Marcus Williams, there was that whole crazy situation. I thought Marcus, outside of obviously getting mossed by the quarterback, that you never want to see that, but I thought Marcus in general played much better than we had seen him play over the course of the season. Kyle Hamilton is doing his thing, and Marlon, even though he was on a limited snap count, teams weren't really thrown to his side in the first place, and that rang true against Denver. So when you look at your official prediction, do you think that Baltimore does anything? Do you think that it's a pass rusher? Is it a secondary member? Or do you think Garrett DeCosta stays pat? And if he does, would you label this trade deadline a disappointment if nothing else happens?
I don't think I'm going to label it as a disappointment. I think if they stay put, then they see something in some of the other guys that we don't see. At the same time, you do have a lot of picks. You got a lot of young players now that are playing and or on IR that are going to be contributing next year. So it's not like you need the picks for next year. Um, with that, bro, what do you got to lose? I think he does. I think unless some team is just stubborn, I'm saying that he'll go out and get somebody. Who I don't know. I mean, all the names we said, I can't be Nostradamus in that regards. But this is why, and this is also why I don't like this. Like that's the all season stuff. It feels like we're violating the purity of the in season. Like this is what you doing, Namdi? You 101. Like one time I saw him, he bull rush right the center right back past doggone Bo Nix. Bo Nix was like, okay, fine, I'm just gonna step up right by you. He's like, oh, wait a minute, what? I mean, that's what we want to talk about. Not who, what, when, where, and why. Like,
Hey, come on. This is Q's in season. Q puts up enough in the offseason with my hey, who are the Ravens gonna sign? Hey, what are we talking about here? And the trade deadline just gives me another excuse to go down that rabbit hole again. So after we're done with this, Q, luckily we don't have any more of that unless we get some crazy, team let's go with somebody and we're like, oh, are the Ravens gonna sign this guy? What are they gonna do? And I know you're gonna be loving that. You're gonna be loving that, but I think that the Ravens do make a move as well. I'm going to say if Eric DeCosta doesn't, it would be a bit of a disappointment for me just because I think that with 11 draft picks like we talked about, I mean, you probably don't need all of those, like you said. So what do you have to lose? I think you worded it perfectly. Like, if this is the year, you should go for an upgrade because we're now 9 weeks into the season and we haven't seen it enough out of the pass rushing group. You could make an argument for a secondary member. I just think they have enough depth there and they'll kind of roll with their talent. I think pass rush is the clear and obvious need. So if I'm going to give a name, I'm going to say most realistic is Jadeveon Clowney. My expectation, I'm going to say is Calais Campbell. I'm going to say they get Calais Campbell on the interior, especially with how banged up they are there with Michael Pierce being out and Brent Urban still not practicing with the concussion. And I will say my prediction is the Ravens will get Calais Campbell. But coming up in the final part of the show, we'll get into the X's and O's with Q. This is what Q's been waiting for the whole show. Broncos analysis, Bengals preview. Stay tuned. Lots to get to on the show. Parts of the show is sponsored by BetterHelp. And I want to take a moment to say thank you to my parents. I wouldn't be here without the support that they've given me since day one, and they've done everything to show that support to me, and I'm really, really appreciative of that. This month is all about gratitude, and along with the people I just shouted out, there's another person that we don't get to thank enough, ourselves. It's sometimes hard to remind ourselves that we're trying our best to make sense of everything, and in this crazy world, that isn't easy. Here's a reminder to send some thanks to the people in your life, including yourself. Therapy has so many different benefits, from learning positive coping skills to how to set boundaries. It can empower you to become the best version of yourself. And it isn't just for those who've experienced major trauma. It's for everyone. If you're thinking of starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online, designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule. All you have to do is fill out a brief questionnaire, get matched with a licensed therapist, switch therapists anytime for no additional charge. Let the gratitude flow with BetterHelp. Visit BetterHelp.com/lockedon today to get 10% off the first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/lockedon. We are back, Locked On Ravens. Kevin Oestreicher and Qadry Ismail still chopping it up with you here. Appreciate everybody for tuning in, making Locked On Ravens a part of your day and your first listen each and every day. We'll be back here later today, right after the trade deadline ends. And obviously, if the Ravens do make a move before then, we'll be going live talking about that deal. So be sure to like and subscribe on YouTube. Follow along, subscribe in audio form as well. But Q, Ravens just absolute drubbing of the Denver Broncos, 41-10. I know there was some worry from some people about this game. Denver's defense coming in as the best pass defense in the league, top 5 rushing defense in the league. Ravens coming off of a tough loss to Cleveland, but they silenced a lot of people. They moved to 6-3. And I think the most important thing to me is obviously the way the offense looked, but the defense pitching a shutout in the second half. They certainly bent, but they did not break. Denver went 1 for 5 on fourth down. It seemed to me, Q, like Denver missed the opportunity on the first fourth down. And then they're like, okay, well, we were close, so let's go for it again. And then, oh, shoot, we missed those points. Now we have to get those points back. Let's go for it again. And then, oh, wait, we didn't get those. It felt like they kept digging themselves deeper and deeper because they kept failing. And that worked out in the Ravens' favor. But what was your overall analysis and takeaway from the defensive side of the ball? And obviously anything offensively you had, because Derrick Henry and Zay Flowers alongside Lamar Jackson, they put in work.
I think when you look at the defense, I think part of, if you're being honest with yourself and you're looking at the film, you got to say to yourself, we escaped one because Bo Nix just wasn't as accurate as he needed to be. You talk about the fourth down play, the one in particular kind of set the table, like literally, like, oh my God. I mean, his dude was wide open, and if he just drops it, boom, that dude walks into the end zone. It's a different ball game, different feel, different understanding, different momentum, different rhythm. So thank Bo Nix, Raven flock, because defense was flocking it up. And so that was what kind of got me a little concerned. When it came to, yes, guys like Tavius Robinson, who, stepped up and played big in some key moments. Trent Simpson steps up big in the red zone, key moments. I love the way that, the secondary, they, Cortland Sutton is a fine receiver, and, he can definitely do what he needs to do. I appreciated the way Ardarius Washington caught the ball. Ooh, he actually caught a ball. Oh my God. Woo-hoo. Those are things that I look at and I say, you can grow on. There's Marcus Williams, I think, to get mossed by Bo Nix. I mean, goodness, yeah. That was tough to see. Philly special is a good play indeed, but man, I thought, for sure he was going to stop him. He didn't. But otherwise, he played, fairly solid, and there weren't, there's a couple holding calls. Marlon had some as well. But, I thought they played fairly solid. I mean, again, some of their drops from the receivers, some of the overthrows from Bo Nix, helped. But I thought they also did what they needed to do and helping themselves out. And then I think offensively, to be honest with you, this offense just knows itself. And as much as it looked like a slow start for Derrick Henry, he just knows, like, I don't care. Y'all go ahead and stack the line all you want. Like, I'm gonna get mine in the second half, and I'm gonna get it. And I dare you to try to stop me. They can't. They did it. And he got his 100 yards. Once he's in the red zone, you can't stop him. He's gonna go ahead and score. He did. Loved, as we talked about earlier, Lamar Jackson is poised throughout the entirety of the game. Practiced one day and then just took the number one defense to task. Like, it was like, hey, y'all know what? Okay, I'm gonna show y'all this is what a real quarterback looks like, and just sliced and diced them. It was a great game planned by Todd Monken. The screen game is got to be the biggest underrated bright spot on the offensive side of football. I've not seen. So the 19 season, it was just flat out red zone dominance. Every time we in the red zone, we scored. This season, it's the art of the screen game that just like continues to just blossom. And Derrick Henry, I'm sure, as hard as he is on himself, I'm sure he's going to be frustrated. Like, dang it, I should have kept my feet. Because, he even got involved in the screen game, and it was really fantastic to see. But pick your poison offense. It just looks like it gets better and better each and every week.
It's incredible. And the way that the Ravens got momentum, really all three phases of the game this time around. We kind of talked about how last week, they lost in all three phases. Well, this week they dominated in all three phases. And now you have a short turnaround against a Cincinnati Bengals team that has provided one of the games of the year with this Baltimore Ravens squad. Obviously, that 41-38 overtime thriller, the Ravens came out on top in. Ravens were down by 10 points for a lot of that second half. They clawed their way back into overtime, and then they won it. But now you have the Bengals coming to Baltimore Thursday night, primetime. We know John Harbaugh and Lamar Jackson live for these primetime games. How do you think the Baltimore and Cincinnati match up? Obviously, we had this conversation just about a month ago. It's not like these two teams haven't played each other in a while. But at this point, the Bengals dealing with some injuries with guys like Zach Moss. T. Higgins didn't practice on Monday, so we're going to see how his status is throughout the week. But Joe Burrow is playing lights-out football right alongside Lamar Jackson right now, and we could be in store for another high-scoring contest if the defenses don't perform like they did last time around.
Yeah, and I think Trey Hendrickson, I think, what do you have, 4 sacks or something crazy? Yep. Their defense seems to get to the quarterback. I know Las Vegas isn't exactly, world beaters. Fired their offensive coordinator, fired their quarterback coach. I just think that regardless of that, you know us, we know you. We're gonna hit you in the mouth. You're gonna hit us back. You're gonna counterpunch. It's just classic AFC North football, one which you have to, not sort of, kinda, you have to sweep Cincinnati because you messed up and gave one to Cleveland. You cannot even remotely think that, well, it's okay, we'll split with Cincinnati, because Cincinnati is the better team than Cleveland. You know how it is, like, teams be riding that high, and then all of a sudden you look at it and they fall off, another team comes back, and now all of a sudden, that said team that got hot late in the year, they're in the wild card and you're facing them. And so you don't want to face Cincinnati for a third time. You want to, just call it what it is, let it be done, and kind of move on from there with Cincinnati in the rearview mirror.
Yeah, and look, Cincinnati is at 4-5 right now. They need this game, right? Just like the Ravens need it in a different way. But Cincinnati wants to keep their season alive here. And, for the Ravens, if they can sweep Cincinnati, give them another AFC loss, give them another divisional loss, all of that will play a huge factor in Cincinnati potentially not making the playoffs, because it's already dicey with them having 5 losses. It's going to be difficult if they are handed their 6. But on the Baltimore side of things, 4 AFC losses through 10 weeks is not going to do you any favors come playoff seeding time. And at that point, you might be wondering what wild card seed you get with the way Pittsburgh is playing. Unless you can sweep Pittsburgh this season, they still have 2 games against that team. So AFC North football, always weird games. whether it is like a blowout one way or they just are super close. But I think it's going to be a really, really good one on Thursday. But Hugh, appreciate your time. Thanks so much for hopping on. I see that missile training sign in the background. Please tell people where they can find you, what you work on, especially over there at Missile Training.
Yeah, it's missiletraining.com. Missiletraining.com is where you can go and interact with me from a human movement and sports performance training aspect. I love working with people ages from 6 all the way up to 85 is my oldest client, giving you an understanding what movement brilliance is all about. And if you need recovery, got tons of recovery tools at your disposal to help you be the best version of you that you can be. You can also look for WJZ on the Purple pregame show. Myself, Alex Glaze, Stefan Dingle. We all every Sunday break down the game, and we will actually be on Thursday night as well. So check us out there. And again, Locked On Ravens. It's all about Locked On Ravens. Qadry Ismail, Kevin Ostriker, Qadry Ismail. We're here for you. We break it all down. Ravens football, AFC North content at its finest. Check us out.
You know it. You know it. All the links to Q's work in the description down below. Be sure to check out everything he's involved in. Really, really cool stuff that Q is working on. And Q, appreciate you as always. Thank you so much for hopping on. And thank you to everybody who tuned in today on Locked On Ravens. Again, schedule programming in flux based off of what happens during this trade deadline. But of course, after any Ravens trade, we'll go live. And then at the end of the deadline day, if nothing happens, we'll probably go live again then. So be sure to stay tuned. Like and subscribe on YouTube on the way out. You can follow along, subscribe in audio form as well. And I'll see you right back here soon on Locked On Ravens.